welcome everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to come to this session. I know there's a lot of sessions going on, so it's much appreciated, and hopefully you'll be able to understand it, and some kind of things we're going to talk about today. So this session is around security automation with NSX and network function virtualization. There's 3 speakers today, and we'll do our introductions and then I'll go into the main session. So my name is Michael Haynes. I am from Fortinet, and I'm one of the integration architects. I've been with Fortinet a little over 2 years now.
My name is Albert Alberts. I work for KPN in the Netherlands, and I've been an architect and working at KPN for, well, 19 years already. I'm going to tell you something about Cloud NL VMware later on.
Yeah, and my name is Marcos Hernandez, and I'm a principal engineer with the NSX team at VMware.
So let me just set the context. There's a lot of information in this presentation, so I'd like to set the context for this session and some of the objectives we would really like for you to really take away with you. So firstly, I guess I'd like to start by saying, are people aware of the partnership relationship that Fortinet has with VMware with regards to its integration into the vSphere platform? Are people aware of that? Is it one? Okay. It is a funny story, just quickly. I bumped into someone from VMware literally 10 minutes ago and had no understanding of what Fortinet does. And we find that quite a lot throughout the globe. And so hopefully this will be able to give you some insight about the close working relationship that Fortinet has with VMware and our integration from an engineering perspective. So in this session, I'd like to at least explain to you what the integration with VMware is, so the Fortinet and the VMware integration, what Fortinet's approach is to software-defined data center, the component integration, what are the moving parts here that make up this solution, and a little bit around our licensing model, which is something that I get asked about a lot, and it always comes up, and for us it's a key issue because obviously it's around performance and numbers as well. So they're kind of the key objectives we'd like to get out of this session. We will also leave about 10 minutes for Q&A if we may. So if people have got questions, they can obviously ask them, and I think that will be a valuable use of people's time. So. As you may or may not be aware, and I'll take it for granted that people are not aware, Fortinet is a global network security leader, and we have many products and technologies and solutions that integrate with a whole ecosystem of partners. Today we're just going to focus on the integration with VMware, and I'll come back to the specifics of that because it can be quite confusing what that integration really is. And this is really just a real marketing slide to kind of give an overview about some of the things we do today. Headquartered in California, and we have R&D really scattered all over the world. But we're known predominantly as a security leader. This is our continued growth and our market share. Absolutely year on year, we've been seeing a lot more year on year growth with regards to the different markets and the ecosystem that we're integrated into. And this is really just showing you a slide around our competitors and where we really fit. I would say one of the I always think Fortinet is its best kept secret. Fortinet has got so many great products and so many integration points. Obviously, we cannot cover them all today, and it would be great for me to be able to do that. But I would like to at least expand on saying we're extremely active with regards to SDN, SDDC, and our private and public cloud integration. So we're doing a lot of different things here. And what's really unique, I think, about Fortinet is our ability to have a single platform that is available on multiple kind of integration points. And I'll come back to this in a second. I think it's an interesting point for us. So, advanced security for VMware's software-defined data center. So the first thing I'd really like to clear up, this is a solution for NSX for vSphere. VMware has really well, it has many integration points, but it has two primary. It has NSX for vSphere and it has NSX transformers, NSX for T. There's two parts. They're completely different. Our development right now is focused mainly on NSX for vSphere. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. I would also like to clarify Fortinet has a technology which is actually integrated into an older version also, which was known as vCloud Networking Security, aka vShield. So we do actually have two versions of this, but I want to try and focus on just, this is the NSX for V version. Side note here, we are currently in development working with VMware and our relationship with regards to NSX for T. So let's build out this slide. So a key point here from Fortinet's perspective, you know, people think we're just a next generation firewall. That's absolutely not the case here. We're a UTM solution. So it's not just about a firewall integration. So you get all of the benefits of a UTM solution with this integration, whether it's for NSX for vSphere, whether it's for VCNS, or whether it's another derivative integration point for us. So mainly in the context of NSX integration, this is around microsegmentation and the protection of the intra-VM connectivity. So really, even though there are multiple firewalls which are available in NSX as a platform, this one is really concentrating directly on the inter-VM connectivity.
I would be interested in knowing if you've implemented microsegmentation with NSX before and are familiar with the concepts of east-west protection that our platform offers. Show of hands. That's actually pretty good.
Pretty good. So probably the key one I look at when I've been working with our partners and other customers, integration, orchestration, and automation. Without that engineering excellence from Fortinet and from VMware, this product would not exist today. It would be an absolute disaster to deploy it. And I'll cover why this is such an elegant solution from a Fortinet's perspective around how we've augmented existing technologies which are actually in the vSphere platform to provide this automation and this orchestration. It's also important to say that with all of our products, and in this case as well, there's full automation with the REST API. So this is a northbound interface, and you can integrate with that, whether it's on the FortiGate side or whether it's from the NSX for vSphere side. So we'll just cover, this is a high-level diagram, just talking about the components from a kind of a very high level here. So if you look at this slide here, if you look at the right-hand side here, you'll see the third-party solution. That's obviously us. And there are two components to the Fortinet integration with the NSX for vSphere platform. There is a service manager, and I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation. There's a service manager that manages the integration from a management perspective. And there's a service appliance or a security node. Like anything in tech, there's always 100 different names. You know, there's an agent name for it. So try and think of this really as a manager solution with a security node appliance. These are all virtual appliances, by the way, and deployed as virtual appliances. In the middle there, NSX, which is the platform, and everything that you do, whether it's from an automation or from the UI, it's using the REST API. And that's important for us as well because it gives us a commonality, a common framework to work from with regards to our integration. These are published APIs as well. They're not, you know, they're not hidden. They're fully published by both Fortinet and VMware.
Yeah, in our architecture, the REST APIs is exposed through our management plane, also known as NSX Manager. So at a very high level, we have a management plane which, like I said, exposes the REST API and serves for integrations like the one we have here. And then there's a control plane which is also centralized, and what is distributed in this platform is the data plane. So those are the three components. But REST API consumption happens through NSX Manager.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The entry point is always NSX Manager. So it doesn't matter where you're talking to, what you're trying to communicate
Correct.
with. The entry point is the northbound interface of the NSX Manager. So anything you do, that's where it ends up to begin with. But it's key to us because a lot of large customers we work with now, and for our integration, has to be automated, has to have orchestration, has to be some way of automating this. And without a REST API, from a user land perspective, obviously that would be quite difficult to do. But fully documented, which is great. On the left-hand side here, the VMware components, we are supporting both releases, so it's the 5.x train and the 6.x train. And we have 2 different versions, as I mentioned, to support that. The one key thing for us, and this is where the partnerships coming, are important, we have to qualify and QA and certify the Fortinet technology with each iteration of NSX for vSphere. Okay, and we do that. We're always fully up to date. There's a compatibility matrix you can get access to, so you know which versions are supported by which NSX platform, and that's key to understand that. But for us, the relationship works very well, and we're always very quick to, when VMware comes out with another iteration of its platform, we're always there to support that.
I can definitely attest to that. Working with so many partners in NSX, I'll say that Fortinet is probably the fastest one in delivering a solution to market. When NSX itself updates the versions, some other partners, take longer to validate and certify their respective integrations.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's very, very key for us to make sure you've got the right versions. The ESXi host comes into play for us because our technology is derived and delivered based on an ESXi host cluster implementation, and that'll become apparent in a minute. And for us, that's a very cool part because it means we don't have to splice up things into different microsegments. It's based on the cluster. That's important for us. There's no memory requirements, etc., stuff like that when we deploy our product. It's based on a cluster, and for us, that makes things a lot easier.
Same thing on the NSX side. The unit of consumption for host preparation is the cluster. So we're aligned there.
So here, just to expand on this, Service Manager is the manager, and you'd be familiar with this because it looks very much like FortiManager. It's not FortiManager, and you can have another layer of management on top of that, but this is a specific manager for this VMX solution. And I should have mentioned that. This whole kind of solution and our integration is known as FortiGate VMX. And that's really a banner for these 2 technologies, these products listed on the right here. So the manager is the actual management plane, and the appliance is actually what gets delivered to the ESXi host. I'll cover that in a little bit more detail. So it's important to at least walk out of here knowing, well, I actually do know what the VMX solution integration actually is, because it's not always clear. I put another slide in here just to give another kind of avenue to what this really looks like here. If you look on the right-hand side here, we obviously use extensively security groups and that container-based technology from NSX. This is very tightly integrated with what we do here. And so what you're looking here is really some workloads, virtual machines here above, based on some security grouping technology with our security node, which is deployed to the ESXi host cluster and then on top of the hypervisor. So key things for us here. This was purposely developed for integration with NSX vSphere. And we are using what is termed NetX to provide this integration. And NetX is basically VMware's interfaces, published APIs, I should say, to a third party. So NetX is network extensibility. There are 2 modes to deploy network extensibility from VMware. So what happens here, just to give you a quick flavor, what happens is we have an engineering team, VMware has an engineering team. Okay, NetX is that kind of piece in the middle. They expose all the interfaces and libraries, etc., that we can write to. We write to that, then we certify that with VMware. Okay, that's kind of there's a lot more involved in that, obviously, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts. NetX has two kind of flavors you can write to. This is very low-level stuff. So you can write to what they call a redirection policy or a copy policy in NetX parlance. And we've chosen the copy policy at the moment, but you can do a redirection policy as well, and we'll come back to that. So key thing to take away from this is really about not just overlaying different pieces of technology. This is a real integration. and not something we've kind of added extra layers on to make it more complex. We've tried to utilize what VMware offers to us.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, the APIs that are available in the NetX implementation in the kernel of the hypervisor are only exposed to our third-party
published
partners. So as a consumer of these services, you would not be able to write against these APIs. Has to happen through this partnership agreement that we have with our technology partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Does that apply to any service chain? Are you doing service chaining to validate a partner?
The question is, if I'm understanding, does that mean that service chaining is only available for solutions that have been certified? Is that the question?
Yeah.
That is, yes.
Yeah.
Service chaining are...
Yeah, correct.
It's not a general purpose, plug in your own appliance or your own technology. You have to go through this certification process.
Are you going to get back to the copy versus
Yeah, I'll cover some of that in a second, yeah. Because one of the aspects of this technology going forward is you have to configure a redirection policy as well to be able to intercept the traffic. So I'm not saying this is a complex proposition. It's not a drop-in product, but what we've tried to do is augment those technologies to make it much easier. And once you've done that, I'll come back to something that I think is unique to Fortinet and to VMware, and no other company that I'm aware of does something specific, and I'll come back to that in a second. So next generation security technology, again, this is a whole ream of UTM-based services, not just the next generation firewall. And you're going to be able to consume that as you would any other platform. It's the same to us. It's the same code base. So what I mentioned when I first opened the talk was about FortiOS. So we have one base piece of technology, an operating system, and that is used by VMX and it's used by a virtual appliance in Azure. It's the same code base. There are slight variations, let's try and, let's be honest, there are slight variations to this, but the major code base is the same. So if you're familiar with FortiOS running in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or wherever it may be, it's the same technology, it's the same code base. That's very cool for us because it means we can derive new features very quickly without having to make too many changes. We have a technology which is known as VDOMs, virtual domains, and this is our unit of multi-tenancy. So when you deploy this product, one of the key things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to provide some sort of multi-tenant architecture. And our technology through FortiOS provides this technology known as a VDOM. I'll just draw out this. This is, I think, a really great slide, and it really shows the workflow of what happens when you integrate the product from Fortinet and into the NSX for vSphere technology. So if you look, I don't know if you can see all this very clearly, but I'll just run through the numbers up here. You've got these numbers which are going 1 to 7, I think it is, and this is the workflow. So if you look at the top right here, the FortiGate Service Manager, again deployed as a virtual appliance and OVF, and what happens here is we register this service. This is a security service. You're going to register this service with the NSX manager. So a couple of these components obviously have to be in play already. And the registration process is a pretty simple, IP address, those kinds of pieces of information, fairly simplistic. Once you've registered the service, the FortiGate VMX solution, what's going to happen here is we're going to utilize a technology called auto-deploy, which is VMware's technology. One of the key things we've tried to do is provide automation through auto-deploy. So when you deploy this technology in the cluster, it automatically deploys this security node. That's very key for us. Example, and I'd like to give examples, I think it's real. If you've got 5 ESXi hosts in a cluster, okay, and you've started with one and you've got the security node deployed, which is the UTM solution. Every time you add another ESXi host to that cluster, we will automatically provide the security node deployment using auto-deploy to the ESXi host. And you can do that geographically, and we have customers doing that today. The beauty of that is if you've got a geographic dispersed kind of organization, someone in Singapore, someone in India, someone in Europe, okay, it makes this, as people add hosts, you may not even be in the same time zone. It makes the security available automatically using a technology. We haven't tried to create any clustering-based, code or technology. We're using auto-deploy. So for us, that's been very key with regards to our integration.
And that also extends to other day two operations, like for example, putting a host in maintenance mode, removing it from the cluster, evacuating VMs. Wherever this VMs goes, the security policy that is enforced and dictated by NSX and Fortinet will be applied. So it's not just day one configuration and deployment, it's what happens after is also accounted for.
For containers, then once you already have that policies out there, it'll automatically then use
The question is, the question, containers as in Docker containers, for example?
No.
Yeah, so NSX today, NSX vSphere, the resolution for security policies is basically the VM NIC of the VM. Okay, so that is as far into the visibility and enforcement of the security policy that we can go with NSX vSphere. If you have a container inside of the VM, that IP address of the container, if you have a pod, for example, if you're using Kubernetes, all the containers behind that pod are not visible to NSX vSphere. The solution in NSX that will be focused on container, on security, network and security of a container unit of compute is NSX transformers, NSXT.
Yes, absolutely. So, as I said, we've got two development arms going on, or we did have. So there was the older version, which was this vCloud Network and Security, which was their old security, their old network virtualization stack. Okay, there is the NSX for vSphere. This is where we integrate now. We're in development for NSX for T. So absolutely 100%.
And if you want to know how service chaining will work in NSXT using context-based headers in our encapsulation protocol, come and look for me. I'll give you some examples, some ideas how this is going to be implemented, which is also very key for the NFV use case, by the way.
And just to add on that, we've also just announced and I know this is not for this session, but we've just announced the integration to have the FortiGate technology with the AWS relationship cloud so we're there as well. So we're covering as many integration ecosystem points as we can with VMware today. Let me get back to this quickly. VPC. Actually, there's two versions actually, but I may I defer that to afterwards so we can. But there are two versions. There's not just one. So let me just get back to this so I can quickly cover this off because I've already looked at the clock and we are really running out of time. So let me quickly ramble on here. So Service Manager. Once that's deployed, OVF, you register that with NSX Manager. Once you've got that defined with NSX Manager, which is your entry point, remember this can be done through the UI or through the API, both. We use auto-deploy to deploy the security node to the ESXi hosts in the cluster. Okay, once we've done that, we synchronize the security nodes with the Service Manager. And the Service Manager has two personalities. It's not only for configuration and security policies and those types of interactions, it's also a license manager. So this is a way to allocate a license and deallocate, if that's a word. So you can basically have a license which spins up in a cluster, and then if you remove that ESXi host from the cluster, it goes away. It gets returned to the license pool. So that's obviously important in looking at how many licenses you need to purchase for this type of a solution. Because if you only have a specific amount of ESXi hosts, you don't want to over-provision. That obviously costs you more money than that's just sitting there. So we have a way of allocating the licenses and putting them back into the pool. So when a security node comes online, one of the first things it does is it will check for a license. It's important to note if you don't get a license, the deployment will fail. So be aware of that. It's an architectural type of challenge, I guess, to know in your planning how many licenses you're going to need. especially if you've got a geographic dispersed organization. So what will ends up happening is we'll do license verification, then we'll do some synchronization with regards to that. Then what will happen is a redirection policy update will happen. And that happens from the NSX manager, and this redirection policy is configured by the NSX manager and is automated from the NSX manager. And once that's happened, remember there's a lot of other stuff going on here, like our deployment of our kernel modules, the deployment of our user land modules. These are things that happen seamlessly. You don't have to really deal with these. They automatically happen. And I'll come back to one other quick point because it hits a lot of customers, and I would like to at least make you aware of it. So once this redirection policy has been enabled, you are pretty much set to go. Then we have real-time object updates which occur between the Fortinet Service Manager and the NSX Manager. So let me just, I want to give a real story here because this is actually what's happened. When we first wrote this product and our integration with VMware, one of the things that was defined by VMware was to utilize a third, a web server to host this security node, because this auto deploy as a mechanism has to find out where to get the security node OVF from. Okay, so you need a placeholder to have that. Initially, the criteria from VMware was to create a web server, and then in the configuration of the service manager, you would pull out the OVF from the web server. But the issue we found with that is it gets misconfigured most of the times because it's not always clear what the relative path is to the web server and where your image is. And that's probably been our #1 support issue for this product. So now what we're doing is we're now having another iteration with VMware engineering to look at embedded that directly into the actual deployment of the service manager instead of having a dependency on a web server. So that's just one thing where the collaboration happens. Initially, that was the directive from VMware. We suddenly, we all realized that wasn't a great option, and now we'll end up building that into the product itself. So you don't have to set up a web server and then provide a configuration to point to that to deploy the security node. So they're the great things that happen with continuous collaboration at an engineering level. I mentioned we have what's termed our integration. Let me just build this out. This is really our packet flow. And really what happens here. So in this diagram, what you're looking at here, obviously on the left-hand side, we require a DV switch. This obviously in the kernel. There is deployed as part of this, when you deploy vSphere, there's the NetX NSX filter driver, and then your workloads on top of that. If you look on the right-hand side here, you're looking at the FortiGate Service Manager is where we define our security policies. So, like I said, if you're familiar with FortiManager, FortiOS, you'll already be fully aware of that, and it's exactly the same manager. And then you look at the FortiGate VMX security node, and that's where this synchronization happens here. So if you look at the packet flow, what I've tried to describe there, if you take a VM, it actually has to be inserted and evaluated by the NSX filter driver first. Okay, so anything that happens from a VM will go to this NSX filter driver. The NSX filter driver then takes this packet and then forwards it through a redirection policy to the FortiGate VMX security node. Okay, once it's gone through the security node, we do our packet processing and anything with regards to our security policies. Then we deliver that back to the NSX security driver, and then it goes out on the network. So that's kind of a quick summary of what we do with our integration with the NSX filter driver.
A couple of comments which I think are important here. As Michael said, everything goes through the NSX firewall first. Yeah. Okay, so you have to allow the traffic that you're going to redirect, and it can get confusing sometimes. What type of traffic is it? Inbound, outbound traffic. So what we've done is, in our trace flow capability, which is a visibility tool that is native to NSX, we can show you exactly the order of operations of this packet flow. You can see the life of a packet as it moves through the kernel. So you can precisely configure the security policies in the order that you need. But the key takeaway here is that everything touches the NSX firewall first before it is copied or redirected to the auxiliary VM that is provided here by Fortinet.
This is the DFW.
Yep.
Yeah,
Distributed firewall.
This is DFW, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. We get a lot of questions. Can we remove that and unload it? No, you can't. You actually need the DFW.
Yeah. Okay. Just a little bit of a time check.
Yeah, I'll just get to the next slide here. So, again, competitive advantage quickly. I mentioned it, VDOM. So it's very common to have, Orange, Coke, Pepsi is a good example I give. 3 different tenants. You need a way of being able to isolate those. And so they, has this multi-tenant capability. VDOMs is that technology which lets you have this ability to have multi-tenancy. Again, also important because you will obviously want different traffic patterns with regards to those different tenants. So you can apply all the security policies and the different traffic patterns you want based on a particular VDOM. They can be the same, but normally they would be different. But you need some feature, a technology to let you have that multi-tenancy capability. And the VDOM is that technology here. And this provides really proper segmentation. I'll just run through that. Another key thing for us is our footprint is extremely small in deploying this technology.
This is great.
So it happens so quickly. You don't have to wait 10 minutes to deploy anything. It happens really, really quick. Maybe you want to give...
Absolutely. I demonstrate that. I have some videos on YouTube showing this in real time. So no, I didn't have to fast forward the video of anything. It's so small, the OVF that is used to deploy the service VM in the hypervisor, that it just happens instantaneously.
Yeah, that's a really key feature for us. Another key one, just to show the kind of integration and how closely aligned these technologies are. If you're in the NSX world, you're really defining most things through a security group, and you use a thing called Service Composer to do that within NSX. And when you've got the security group, that's your context that you can apply as an object-based model to many different things throughout a security policy. So what we ended up doing is we ended up integrating that. So when you create a security group in one completely different environment, we can consume that within the FortiGate Service Manager. So you can act on that immediately. So if I create a security group called foo, I can utilize that to apply a security policy within the FortiGate Service Manager. I haven't got to create a different security group container or any, it's the same security group. So that integration is tightly coupled because in the NSX world, it is the security group, which is really the mainstream type of context that you would use.
And that really is what you want to use. Our firewall can also create IP-based rules, but the whole point about NSX and the context that we exchange with our partners is to make our firewall look like your business and not look like your network, right? Prod, dev, those are the containers that you want to use here.
Yeah, and there can be dynamic objects as well. So we don't just tie you down to a specific type. It can be dynamic as well.
Absolutely.
And this diagram, this slide just gives you a depiction here. FortiManager, that's another management type of product, which can integrate with the Service Manager, which is a specific manager for this particular integration, this particular solution. And then you'll see on the left-hand side here the NSX security objects, and those being consumed by the FortiGate VMX security node. So really very tight integration with the key aspect of how you would define security policies and how you would apply them in two completely different products and technologies, even though they're integrated. So here is just an example, just trying to give you a few screenshots. If you're looking here really at the Service Manager again, and you're looking at the kind of the tuple, the 6-tuple here, or 5-tuple in this case, where you have incoming traffic, you have the source, where it's going to, the type of destination. Here it's just trying to depict these are security groups, okay, that we've consumed from NSX. And again, another depiction of this around our integration. Here you're looking at really, on the right-hand side, you're looking at NSX, that's its management plane, and on the left-hand side, our management plane, which is the Service Manager. And you can see the correlation, the relationship between those security groups and how we tune them. So very, very key for us to be able to consume those security groups that are derived from Service Composer in NSX.
And there was a comment very quickly embedded in the slide that you probably didn't pick on, that is north-south synchronization of the security groups. The NSX firewall in this solution is optimized for east-west, but the same containers, the same security groups can actually be published to the north-south Fortinet appliance to enforce policy there, because there's some traffic that you're going to want to block at the perimeter and not let enter into the east-west, into a hypervisor, because that widens your attack surface. So that synchronization has been very well accomplished here.
Yeah. Just to kind of go on from that, so one of the things we get asked a lot about is kind of analysis. We have a product called FortiAnalyzer that enables us to take the per tenant logs from a FortiGate VMX. We provide this all through a configuration, and to analyze those logs per tenant. So this is really, even though there is logging, this is our kind of universal logging mechanism for us, where you can get a lot more detailed logging. And so we have an integration with that as well. And this is all part of providing that solution. And this just is showing you where those logs would go. This is in real time as well. And probably the number one requirement I've had personally is, how do I do that per tenant, or can I stripe that across all of my tenants? And you can with this solution.
I just have quick time check.
Yep. And we're gonna just last slide, I think, just to show you kind of what this looks like. It's all a very universal look and feel. So if you know FortiOS and you use the FortiGate, FortiManager, the FortiGate Service Manager, the VMX Service Manager, all these look very, very similar and very easy to configure, but totally integrated. And we're running out of time, so we're going to ask our friend from KPN to come up and do his integration bit about your...
You need to switch slides, right?
Yeah,
real quick.
Slides.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, let me just talk about, so I mentioned the licensing model here. It's very key for us, and it plays key in your architectural decisions when you deploy this product. So, as I said, this is one license per ESXi host. So you have 5 ESXi hosts, you have to buy 5 licenses. It's embedded with part of the service manager, so there's no license for that per se. So when you're designing this solution, and this kind of, and again, one of the top things I get asked about, when you're designing this solution, you have to have some sort of metrics about your growth patterns and where you're going to deploy this product. You can have multiple service managers, you can have one service manager. There are different ways to splice this up. But the key thing to really understand is that you've got to, you really need to understand that if you deploy this technology and you don't have a license, then obviously there's going to be a failure. And this is this is something again which is really sparked up a way of us auto-correcting that, because one thing you don't want to do is, as I mentioned, you don't want to deploy this technology and it's in India, and then you find out somehow the next morning when you come online it didn't, your security was not in place because you didn't have a license. So it's just an architectural factor, but again, it comes back to this is a license manager as well as an integration with the VMX code. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me hand that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Albert Alberts. I work at KPN. KPN is, I think we mentioned it already. So, KPN is, let me first ask the audience. How many people here know KPN? That's very few. Okay, good. Well, KPN is a telco from the Netherlands. One of the major telcos, I guess. We have a lot of landlines, we have the mobile telco, we have 4G, we are busy with 5G, and we have a complete coverage of the whole country with LoRa. Anyone familiar with LoRa networking? Okay, 5, 6 hands, okay, 7, sorry. We also offer internet services and TV services, so we have all-in-one packages. And besides that, a couple of years ago, we bought a big ICT company, and we also introduced ICT services. A bit by the numbers, 15,000 employees, a lot of fixed-line customers, the thing mentioning here is that we are one of the 15 worldwide VMware Showcase partners. And we are Showcase partner, probably because we have vRealize Suite integrated and in a very nicely way, but I'm going to show you parts of that. We are working on KPN CloudNL VMware, and CloudNL VMware is part of a bigger product line. It's called Managed Hybrid Cloud, and Managed Hybrid Cloud offers several services. You have to look up the management pitch here. KPN's Managed Hybrid Cloud is an application-centric service concept. Its main components are cloud infrastructure, networking, managed services, and integrated compliance and security. And all that is, there's a focus on offering true hybrid service for every type of application, including 24/7 support. Well, okay, that's the management part. Now let's off to the technical things. CloudNL means we are a cloud offering. So services are delivered from within the Netherlands, from KPN data centers. Maintenance is also done by Dutch people, Dutch law, so we are completely compliant with our own framework. So no Patriot thingies. We are prepared, we have our stuff just in the Netherlands. And of course we offer some self-service management, and we do that with VRA. You can create your own infrastructure, you can manage your own infrastructure, it's scalable, and it's pay-per-use. So all the cloud features you actually want. CloudNL VMware is that little part there, that little dot in the green. We use vRealize automation, vRealize orchestration, NSX, and vCenter and vSphere. And the talk now is about how we use Fortinet as well. So how does the customer get our products? Well, as I told before, we use vRealize. Something went wrong with the fonts. So port all means portal. It's the vRealize portal we offer. And the other side is on the right side, you have there is the different APIs we offer. We offer the APIs all exposed by VRA. It's a REST API, and you can hook up Python, C#, Ruby, but also we have built, and that's on the right there, it's the Terraform provider. And some people in the room here using Terraform or HashiCorp? Only one? Oh my God. Okay, good to know. There you go. By default, our tenants, they get this environment. From the top, we have internet and we have a perimeter ESG. ESG, everybody familiar with the terms of ESG? Edge Services Gateway by NSX. We have a perimeter ESG, and below that we have a tenant ESG. And on the tenant ESG, you see that the green part only covers a part of the tenant ESG, because we the top interface, the interface that's interacting with the perimeter ESG is still KPN territory. Everything below that is for the customer. So what do they get? It's, they have a public network, obviously without the VMs, but they just get a network with public IPs in it. They're provided by an IPAM server. And below that we have the distributed logical router, and below the distributed logic we have a private IP range. You can choose your own IP ranges there. That's more or less it. There's one restriction as well. Due to the price of public IP addresses, we only allow the customers to create one public IP address space. Below the distributed logical router, the customers are free to choose and make as many networks as they want. And networks are created really on the fly. Multi-tenancy, people from Fortinet VMware already mentioned, multi-tenancy is for us really important. We use NSX, as told before, but a little problem with NSX is that it's not really multi-tenant. So if you want to have NSX off to your customers, then you have to put a layer on top of that. And we put on a VRA on top of that. And there's separation now on the perimeter ESG, so every tenant is below the perimeter ESG. So we have many tenants under perimeter ESG, and Another, yeah. Also worth mentioning here is that we are using 2 data centers here. A customer gets resources in data center 1 and data center 2. So we do not provide an interconnection between those data centers, but customers can go through the internet to the other data center, and because they're in control of the tenant ESG there, they can unlock the services over there. Next gen firewall. We did a proof of concept with Fortinet guys. We had a request from one of our customers, we need a next gen firewall. NSX offers also firewall capabilities, but that was not just enough. They wanted more. So the customer wanted to have a next gen firewall, but we also had some requirements on the platform. We need integration with NSX. Multi-tenancy was really important for us. The NSX part, but also the self-service port was important. And because some of our customers use the API, we also needed the multi-tenant API. And another thing we really would love to have is integration with vRealize, because that would save us a lot of trouble. Initially, the environment looked like this. You have your perimeter ESC, the tenant ESC again, and next to it in our management network, you have your NSX manager. We added the FortiGate service manager and the VMX security nodes. And as you can see, if we go back and forward, nothing has changed in the network. Well, I almost want to repeat it. Nothing has changed in the network, and you offer next-gen firewall. We looked at different vendors, and it's not to be patting Fortinet on the back, but Fortinet is one of the parties that offers true multi-tenancy with NSX. We tried different vendors, and we had to change the architecture of the tenant network to make it work. And this is what we kind of expected. Customer on the left, a single pane of glass with vRealize and the orchestration layer. An API to the Fortinet service manager, and we hoped we could do it on this way. But we're missing the integration with vRealize. So what do we get? We get something like this. So we have an interface to Fortinet service manager, but not only one, but also to the other data center. So 2 interfaces to manage by the customers. And it was not an ideal situation. It's possible, but this is not something you want to offer to your customers. This is something you would like to offer. And then we add the FortiManager. FortiManager, you put them in front of the 2 service managers, and now you have one single pane of glass for, well, 2 single panes, one with FortiManager and one with vRealize. And this way we have a nice integrated overview, and we would like to have that integration with vRealize, but at this moment it's not possible. So FortiManager does solve the dual interface problem, but it was not available during the POC we had. I think what I heard was there was a FortiManager available already for this environment now, but well, the slides were already ready and didn't try it yet. So the current status is still beta, and can you tell us something about when it's going to be released? No, not known. It's beta, it's testing, so we just have to wait. So if we look at the POC results we had, integration NSX, perfect. Multi-tenancy NSX, also perfect. Multi-tenant self-service portal, yes, we had a problem there. 2 self-service portals and multi-tenant API, but 2 interfaces. Not an ideal situation. And integration with Realize, well, that's just a no-go. So, but after we add, if we can add the FortiManager, and it's still somewhere in the future, then we have a situation like this. The first 4 bullets get a green, and we still have to do the vRealize integration. We do have some plans, and if you have to go back to this one, yeah. if you see, look at this, the interface from VRealize, we're going to offer the customer all those interfaces through VRA. But through VRA, it's only a limited amount of functionality we're going to deliver. Only the last, well, if you have an 80-20 rule, we could go for the 80% stuff that the customer is going to use, that we're going to offer through the VRA. And the 20% that's not available is going to be directly from the FortiManager manager. But this is just a future scenario. So, skip through. Oh. And we are the questions. My colleagues.
Let me just add one thing here. So we have recently, so Fortinet has just recently embarked on our integration with VRealize. So VRealize is a banner, right? There's a lot of products involved in that. The first one we're going to integrate with is the Network Insight VRealize products. So we're currently embarking on that literally now. It's just started. So you'll see a lot more, I believe, integration with more of the VMware suite of products. And VRealize Network Insight will be one of the first for the Fortinet-based technologies. So work is happening, and I hope KPN will be able to take advantage of some of those. But that work is started.
Any questions or comments?
There's a question here on the user interface. Can you leverage FortiPortal instead of Fortinet experience, or is it something that not included in your POC?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so about FortiPortal. Is it being leveraged in your POC at all, or is it not being scoped, the FortiPortal product?
What do you mean with FortiPortal? We have a VRA portal.
No, yeah. In this instance, no, it's not being utilized. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions? This is your opportunity. Well, you can grab us afterwards. I guess I'd like to close by saying thank you so much for attending this session. Appreciate you taking the time. There's obviously a lot going on at VMworld, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.